So there are 5 things that audiences really hate when they see you perform, and you have to get these 5 things right if you want to keep them entertained and wanting more. So let's talk about them. Hey, and welcome to Music Space, where we help working musicians just like you learn how to quickly and easily make a living with your craft. So if you're new here to the channel, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded. Okay, so let's jump right into this. And this video is sort of a continuation of a prior video I did on how to entertain your audience. And I'll drop a link to that at the end of this video in a card, so be sure to check that out when you're done with this video. Now, there's no doubt that keeping your audience entertained while you're performing is really important. And a huge part of that is knowing what your audience likes and what they don't like. And if you do these 5 particular things that audiences don't like, they likely won't tip you, they'll give you that look of disgust or disapproval, and at worst, they'll walk out on you. And the first thing that audiences really hate is when you don't sound like the music. When an audience has to sit and think about or figure out what it is that you're playing for longer than a few seconds, they get turned off really quickly. You know how it's said that people decide whether or not they are attracted to someone in about a 1/5 of a second? Well, it's sort of that same principle here. People kind of decide whether or not they like you as an artist or band within a few seconds. Now, that doesn't mean that you or your band have to be perfect. It just means that the songs you're playing and the way that you're performing them needs to be recognizable. Like if you start off playing a song like Brown Eyed Girl and it doesn't have those recognizable musical elements there, and the audience has to sit there like, what is that? Is that, they will be more likely to tune you out. And the tricky part about this is that most of the audience isn't even doing this consciously. They're just sort of experiencing this in a sort of, this is not good, or this doesn't sound good, or something isn't right about this kind of way. Now, another thing that audiences hate are long solos. And this is something that I have literally seen audiences leave the dance floor and even leave the venue for. These extra long solos that particular instrumentalists take in bands get tiring to audiences really quickly. And I know you've been practicing and shedding these cool licks, riffs, runs, and chops, but you have to learn to tame those and frankly, save some. Like back in the day, some friends and I would call this sort of thing the last gig mentality. Like these people are taking solos like this is the last gig they will ever play. And not to mention, these long solos lose musicality, which makes them less relatable to audiences. Like what happened to a good 8-bar, 16-bar, or even 32-bar solo on the long end? Cats out here now are taking like 5 and 6 minute solos while people are dancing on the dance floor. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely instances where things like this are appropriate, but generally speaking, this is something that audiences don't tend to relate to very much. And right before we get to the next thing, if you're getting value out of this video so far, do me a quick favor and hit the like button on this video. That just helps this video get spread and helps with the YouTube algorithm, and it lets me know that you appreciate this content. Now, another thing that audiences really don't like is when you don't keep them dancing. And this is really simple. Audiences want to have fun, and dancing is sort of synonymous with fun when it comes to audiences. And audiences really hate when bands aren't motivating or inspiring them to dance and have fun. And this is usually done by playing songs that your audience isn't familiar with, or placing the songs in poor order, or long solos, etc. Like you could be doing too many slow songs back to back, or even too many fast songs back to back if you have an older audience. And this is something that really causes the crowd to get disinterested. A huge part of your job as a performer is to keep the audience dancing and having fun, where it's appropriate, of course, but audiences know and expect this from you, and they tend to get a little annoyed when you don't give it to them. Now, another thing that audiences don't like is thinking that a DJ would have been better for this event. Something that you should always keep in mind is this: when a person or an entity or club or venue hires you, they almost always have the option of going with the DJ instead. And even more, it's likely the case that they considered a DJ before hiring you. And if they choose to hire you, it probably means that they think you would be better for their audience, but they probably still want some of what a DJ would bring. And that's to keep the mood lively and have people dancing and play familiar songs. And if you're up there performing on stage, not connecting with the audience, not playing familiar songs and things like that, they're going to think that a DJ probably would be better for this event. And this is something you definitely don't want your audience to be thinking. And it's absolutely something you don't want the people who hired you thinking, because guess what? Next time they probably will go with the DJ. And that means that a future gig that you could have as a band will now go to a DJ. And to be clear, I'm not suggesting anything negative at all about DJs. I love DJs. I'm just talking about what audiences tend to expect from live bands. And the truth is, they want a little bit of what a DJ brings when it concerns playing popular songs and keeping the mood lively and keeping them on the dance floor. And they get annoyed when they don't get it. Now next, and this is probably the biggest one of them all, but audiences really hate when bands are too loud. And as I said, this is probably the biggest one of them all, and it's probably the most common concern that audiences have. And it's something that we bands and artists really have to be careful about, because audiences can be fickle. Like, you could play the same venue 2 nights in a row, and on night 1 your volume is perfectly fine, and then on night 2 people are complaining that you're too loud and you haven't even changed anything. But what that means for us as musicians and bands is we always have to be cognizant of our sound and the volume of that sound. And this is especially true if you play in bands with a lot of mid-frequency range instruments like guitars and things like that, where these guitars tend to have their fundamentals in that irritating frequency range. And what I mean by that is that there are certain frequencies that tend to be a little bit more irritating to the human ear than others, and some instruments live closer to those irritating ranges than others. So a guitar, for example, will get more irritating to the human ear faster than, say, a bass guitar would. But again, this all comes down to just being aware of the volume of our sound and the audience that we're playing for. Because again, this is something that audiences will walk out on you for, just for being too loud. Now, as I mentioned, this video is sort of a follow-up video from a prior video I did on how to entertain your audience, and you can check that video out right here.